Midnight, the air tastes of smoke and sugar. A rooster cries, but no dawn follows, only silence, thick and choking. The cane fields sway like shadows hiding blades. Somewhere a door rattles, iron chains brushing against wood. A whisper slices the quiet. Now. A scream tears open the night, joined by another, then another, until the whole valley echoes with terror. Fire licks the horizon, its orange glow dancing across machetes slick with blood. Bodies collapse in mud, white linen soaked crimson. He didn't beg. He didn't run. They called him Tacky. The sun rises over Jamaica's north coast, warm and golden, but it does not bring peace. It burns on fields that swallow men alive. The boiling houses roar with steam and fire. The smell of molasses clings to everything, sweet, sickening, heavy with death. Overseers shout from horseback, whips cracking like gunfire, while thin arms cut cane until they blister. A pale man clutches his ledger as though it were scripture. His name is Samuel Gray. His lips twitch whenever a coin is mentioned, his eyes darting at shadows. He counts men the way others count cattle. 72 on the line, he mutters, running his finger over numbers. One missing. His throat tightens. One always missing. An older woman hums in the distance, bent low as she ties cane bundles. Her voice is cracked, but the tune lingers like smoke. They call her Nanny Rose. Her hair is silver, her hands scarred, her lullabies stitched with grief. A boy beside her whispers, "Why do you sing that song, Nanny?" "To remember," she answers, never pausing her work. "A song is a chain you can carry in your chest." Gray's gaze flicks toward her, suspicious. He hates her songs, hates how the other slaves fall quiet when she sings. A church bell tolls across the valley. Easter Sunday. The planters polish boots and drink rum before service, their laughter spilling through open windows. They speak of sugar prices in London, not of the bodies breaking in their fields. Gray scribbles in his ledger again. Sugar is gold. Men are nothing. A rider thunders past him, Overseer William Blake, whiskey sloshing from a tin flask in his hand. His voice is a whip in itself. "Faster!" he roars. "Cane doesn't cut itself." "Move, you black devils!" The crack of leather slices the air. A man stumbles, bleeding. Blake laughs, the sound jagged as glass. Nanny Rose lowers her head, humming louder now, covering the cries. Later, Gray finds himself in the storehouse checking barrels. The smell of rum hangs thick. He presses his hand against a cask, sighs, then whispers to himself, "God help us if they ever rise. God help us all." Outside, the sun sinks low and the fields glow red with light. Shadows stretch long. The air is heavy with something unseen, a promise waiting. The colony was the richest jewel in Britain's crown, but it was built on bones. 1 in 10 survived the Middle Passage. The rest lay in the ocean's dark grave. Those who reached Jamaica worked until death, for sugar sweeter than life. In the distance, Nanny Rose hums her lullaby once more. The boy beside her whispers the words, learning them like a prayer. The bell tolls again. This time it sounds like a warning. The night is thick with stars. The cane fields sleep, but the past does not. Tacky sits by the dying embers of a fire, his wrist scarred where iron once bit deep. Around his left wrist hangs a single ivory bead, small, weathered, shining faintly in the firelight. He turns it between his fingers like a prayer. Kwaku crouches nearby, sharpening a machete against stone. His chest bears a jagged scar, the mark of chains that once tore his flesh during the Middle Passage. His silence speaks louder than words, but tonight he chooses to break it. "You remember the drums?" Kwaku's voice is low, almost swallowed by the wind. Tacky nods slowly. "I remember the drums. I remember the fire. I remember being called king." "You were more than king," Kwaku presses. "You were our shield. And now?" He glances at the plantation house in the distance, its lanterns glowing like a predator's eyes. "Now we are shadows." Tacky clenches his fist around the bead. Shadows can strangle a man if he does not see them coming. A soft laugh drifts from behind them. Alma steps forward, a red kerchief tied in her hair, the fabric bright even in the dim firelight. Her voice is gentle, but her eyes burn. "Whisper quieter, both of you." Shadows may be listening. Tacky rises to meet her gaze. "And what do you hear in the shadows, Alma?" She hums a tune, the same lullaby Nanny Rose sang earlier. Only on her lips it is not mourning, it is a promise. "I hear chains breaking," she whispers. Kwaku studies her, the scar on his chest rising and falling as he breathes. "Do you believe freedom is more than a dream?" Alma steps closer, touching the ivory bead at Tacky's wrist. Dreams are seeds. Plant them deep and one day fire will grow. They fall into silence, listening to the night. Crickets sing. The wind stirs cane leaves, and from afar, faint laughter echoes from the planter's house. Tacky speaks again, voice firm. I was born under fire. I was not born to bow. Kwaku grips the machete tighter. Then we wait for the moment. And when it comes, we strike. Amma lowers her kerchief, wiping sweat from her brow. Wait too long and hope rots. Act too soon and blood spills in vain. The moment will come, it must. The three of them stand there, chief, warrior, lover. Symbols etched into their very bodies, bead, scar, kerchief. The fire crackles, smoke rising like a signal to the heavens. Before chains, they had names sung by drums. Before whips, they had stories whispered by fire. The planters thought they bought silence. But silence was only the mask of waiting. The ivory bead gleams. The scar glistens. The kerchief glows red. Symbols of survival. Symbols of what is yet to come. The lullaby fades into the night. The moon spills silver across the fields. A whip cracks in the distance, followed by laughter. William Blake stumbles out of the great house, flask in hand. His boots are polished, but his shirt hangs loose, stained with rum. His eyes are red-rimmed, mean, always hungry for cruelty. He drags the whip across the dirt as if it were a pet snake. Lazy dogs, he slurs, glaring at the slave quarters. Tomorrow I'll bleed twice the work out of you. Inside one of the huts, Tacky sits with Amma, their hands entwined. The red kerchief is spread across her lap, folded and refolded as if it were an heirloom of royalty. Amma whispers, "If he knew, Blake would hang us for this." Tacky brushes his thumb over the ivory bead. "Let him try. They cannot kill what already burns." Amma leans her head against his shoulder. "But they can kill us, and they will if we are not careful." A shadow moves at the doorway. Kwaku slips inside, eyes sharp. "They are restless," he says. Whispers in the hut, songs in the fields. The old ones remember the Obeah rites. They say spirits are ready. Amma looks up. "Spirits alone won't free us." Kwaku sits, lowering his voice. "Not spirits, people, men willing to die for freedom. Women willing to set fire to the cane fields." Tacky's jaw tightens. "Then we must be more than whispers." Before Amma can answer, the hut door creaks open again. Father Gabriel stands in the frame, his robe patched, his eyes sunken. He smells faintly of ink and candle wax. He carries a book under one arm, worn and torn. His voice is soft, like confession. "I should not be here." Tacky's eyes narrow. "Then why are you?" Gabriel hesitates, then steps inside, closing the door. "Because silence is sin, and I have been silent too long." Kwaku leans forward, suspicious. "What do you want, priest?" Gabriel opens the book, pages fluttering. "This is scripture, but hidden inside." He pulls out folded paper, smuggled beneath the binding. Letters, poems, words from men who believed in freedom. Amma takes one sheet, her fingers trembling. She reads aloud, "No man is born a slave. Chains are hammered, but hearts are born free." Tacky studies Gabriel. "Why give this to us?" The priest swallows hard. "Because one of you is already betraying the rest, and I cannot keep your secrets safe much longer." A cold silence spreads. Kwaku's hand drifts toward his machete. "Who?" Gabriel shakes his head. "I do not know the name, but I hear whispers, a tongue wagging to Blake. Someone close." Amma folds the letter against her chest. "Then we must speak carefully, even in dreams." Outside, Blake's voice roars again, drunk and cruel. "Tomorrow I'll cut out the tongue of the first one who looks me in the eye." Inside, Tacky stands, lifting his chin. "Let him roar." His voice is only thunder. Hours will be lightning as days pass. In the fields, whispers weave like threads. Kojo, a young rebel with bare feet and a grin too sharp for his years, darts between huts carrying messages. He hides them in cane bundles, sings them in coded songs. His speed is legend. Mary Ann, a pale-skinned servant in the planter's house, listens at doors, carrying secrets back to her enslaved kin. Her eyes flicker like candles, fearing discovery but drawn to rebellion. At night, Amma ties the kerchief tighter. "Every song, every word, it risks our lives." Tacky answers, steady. "Risk is the seed of freedom," Kwaku mutters, "and betrayal is the worm that eats the seed." The bonds between them deepened, chief, friend, lover. But so did the cracks. Forbidden love, whispered betrayals, the promise of spirits, the cruelty of masters, all threads pulling toward the inevitable. By day, cane fields sang with work. By night, huts murmured with fire. The lullaby returned again and again, now not just mourning but a signal, a song that said, "Wait, watch, the fire is coming." And in the shadows someone listened who should not have. The sun is merciless. The cane fields shimmer and the air is thick with the sweet stench of fermenting sugar. Children stagger under loads too heavy for their shoulders. Blake rides into the field on horseback, whip coiled like a serpent. His flask dangles from his saddle half empty, his eyes bloodshot but sharp enough to find prey. "Faster!" he bellows. Easter is no excuse for laziness. His gaze fixes on a boy, no more than 12, stealing a piece of cane. The child's ribs jut like sticks, his hands trembling as he hides the stalk behind his back. Blake's grin spreads. "Come here, little thief." The boy hesitates. Nanny Rose hums faintly under her breath, but her song falters when Blake dismounts. "Come here," Blake repeats, voice like venom. The boy steps forward, shaking. His eyes dart toward Tacky in the row beside him as if seeking protection. Tacky's hand still, gripping the machete tighter, but he lowers his gaze. "Not yet." Blake yanks the cane from the boy's hands, holding it high. "Sugar," he sneers, "is worth more than your life." The whip cracks. The boy screams. Again, until the screams fade into silence. Gray, the bookkeeper, scribbles in his ledger with trembling fingers, pretending not to see. His lips whisper, 71 on the line. The body lies in the dirt, the cane stalk broken beside it, sticky with blood. Tacky exhales slowly. His knuckles whiten around the machete's handle. Kwaku steps close, whispering, "Now?" Tacky shakes his head. "Not yet, but soon." Amma's eyes glisten, the red kerchief slipping down her brow as she turns away. "How many more?" she murmurs. Blake wipes sweat from his face, laughing. "Let this be a lesson to the rest of you. Cane before blood, cane before breath." The overseer mounts his horse again, snapping the whip in the air. The slaves bow their heads, silent, their chains rattling faintly like teeth grinding. Nanny Rose begins to hum. This time no one joins her. Even the wind holds its breath. That night in the huts, the silence cracks. Kwaku paces like a caged animal. We should have killed him there. Right there. Tacky sits still, his bead glinting in firelight. A death without plan is a death wasted. The boy will not be forgotten. Amma sits between them, kerchief clutched in her fist. Her voice trembles, but it does not break. If we wait, more children will die. How long must we swallow this? Tacky lifts his head, eyes hard as iron. Until the moment arrives. Until one death can buy 100 lives, Kwaku snarls. And if the traitor speaks before then? Silence falls. The word traitor hangs heavy. Gabriel's warning still gnaws at them. Amma's voice is barely a whisper. Then we must strike soon. Sooner than we planned, the fire snaps. The lullaby begins again. Soft, broken, filled with sorrow. That day the fields drank the blood of a child. And in silence something shifted. The slaves lowered their heads before the whip, but in their hearts they lifted blades. Night cloaks the fields. The air thick with the smell of rum and cane. The huts whisper like a hive. Tacky gathers with Kwaku, Amma, and a circle of trusted hands. Kojo darts in barefoot, breathing hard, a grin stretched across his young face. "The coast is clear," he pants. "I ran the ridge twice. No patrols." His chest rises and falls like a drumbeat. Tacky nods. "Good. You are our wind, Kojo. Without you, messages die in the dust." Kojo flashes his teeth proudly. Wind never stops blowing. Marianne slips from the shadows, her pale skin catching moonlight. She carries a folded scrap of paper hidden in her sleeve. Her voice is hushed. From the big house. They are drinking heavy tonight. Blake has gone to the tavern. They will not stir until dawn. Kwaku narrows his eyes. "Why bring us this?" "If they catch you," Marianne interrupts sharp. "Because my blood may be half theirs, but my heart is not. My mother died in the field, same as yours." Amma's gaze softens, nodding once. "Then your place is with us." From the corner, Dr. James Mortimer, a thin man with ink-stained hands and a bottle of laudanum in his satchel, shifts uneasily. His voice trembles. "If they find me helping you," Tacky cuts him off. "You will help, or you will watch more children bleed. Which weighs heavier on your soul, Doctor?" Mortimer swallows, nodding quickly. I will supply what you need. Laudanum for their drink. Enough to keep them blind when the fire comes." Kwaku's scar glints as he leans forward. "And if you betray us, I'll carve that soul of yours out through your ribs." Mortimer pales, clutching his satchel tighter. 2 nights later, they gather in the forest. A circle forms around a fire, smoke spiraling into the dark sky. An old man smears ashes across foreheads, murmuring in Akan, calling upon spirits to shield their blades. Amma ties her kerchief tighter, red against her dark skin like a banner of war. She presses her palm to Tacky's bead. "This is no longer a dream," she whispers. Tacky looks into her eyes. "No, it is destiny." Kwaku lifts his machete high, the firelight flashing across steel. No chains, no masters, no mercy. The circle answers in one voice, "No mercy," but danger stalks them still. Samuel Gray, the bookkeeper, walks the fields one evening, his lantern swaying. He pauses by a cane stack and his light glints off steel. Hidden machetes. His breath hitches. From the shadows, Kojo darts forward, knocking the lantern to the ground. Flames sputter. Gray curses, fumbling. When he looks up, the boy is gone, swallowed by the night. Gray mutters, trembling, "God help us if they rise." He walks faster, clutching his ledger close. In the tavern, Blake drinks himself blind. "Lazy bastards," he mutters, slamming his flask down. "I'll break their bones come dawn." His whip coils at his side, but his eyes close in drunken sleep. The planters slept. The rebels did not. Steel sharpened in silence. Ashes marked their brows. Songs turned into codes. Every hour waiting was a storm gathering strength. The wind was shifting, the fire was almost here. The dawn was a smear of gray, as if the sky itself hesitated. Tacky stood at the fringe of the field, bead against his wrist, breath steady. Around him, men and women formed a slow-living tide. Machetes wrapped in cloth, eyes hard, songs swallowed into silence. Amma adjusted her red kerchief and met his gaze. "Remember the signal," she mouthed. Kojo, bare feet on cold earth, tilted his head and began to whistle the lullaby. Soft, innocuous. The tune threaded through the rows, unheard as code. Marianne leaned from a back window, then slipped away when the overseer's voice boomed. "Easter service at sunrise," Blake called, stumbling. "Make it quick." Tacky stepped forward. "Tonight we are no longer shadows," he said, voice low. "We take what they took." A chorus answered, "We take." They moved like a black tide. The first stroke was sudden, a flash of metal, a shout, a man toppled. The sugar storehouse sat heavy and bright. Amma reached it, hand steady. She thrust a torch into barrel rags and flame-kissed rum and timber. "Fire!" someone shouted. Smoke rose in a hungry column. Screams cut the morning like a blade. Blake turned, face contorted, then the machete found him. He fell, his flask shattering, whiskey soaking earth like oil. Gray dropped his ledger and ran, pages fluttering like wounded birds. "Samuel, ledger!" someone cried, and a last frantic hand reached for numbers that counted men as profit. Kojo darted toward the gate to scatter alarms, but a distant shout froze him. Militiamen, faster than they'd planned, rode across the ridge. "To arms!" someone shouted. The wind changed. Thunder of hooves answered the rebels' footfall. Tacky's world narrowed to breaths and blood. He saw Kwaku down a row, parrying, striking, the scar on his chest a map of endurance. He saw Amma at the storehouse, kerchief flaming red, eyes turned to the sky. He saw Marianne pulling a child from beneath a cart and shove him toward the woods. A sudden hand seized Kojo. Rope bit into his wrists. "Traitor!" a voice hissed. One of the planter's watchmen had slipped into the chaos and grabbed the boy. Kojo looks up, grin gone, eyes bright as a trapped bird. "Run!" Tacky bellowed, slicing toward them. The traitor, someone they had not suspected, stepped from behind a cane stack, face pale, hands trembling. "I did it for my family," he gasped. He raised a pistol. Mortimer stood nearby, face collapsed by fear. He had nodded to the man earlier, whispering of hidden caches and meeting times. Mortimer's mouth opened as if to speak. Betrayal laid bare. "No!" Amma screamed, lunging. Her torch flung sparks into smoke. "The traitor fired!" The shot cracked. Kojo collapsed, dark blooming across his shirt. Silence slammed the field for a heartbeat, then chaos. Men who had fought with each other minutes ago now turned on the traitor. Kwaku's blade found the hand that held the pistol. The traitor fell, eyes wide with the cost of his choice. Mortimer's shoulders shook. He tried. "I thought..." Tacky cut him off. "You thought of your skin. Others thought of their children. His voice was not rage but reckoning. Around them, the militia pressed in, truncheons thudding, pistols barking. The rebels had the element of surprise, but not time. Men were dragged, women pushed. The storehouse roared like a mouth swallowing the morning. Amma struck a planter with the blunt of her torch. "For the boy," she breathed. "For every child," Kwaku answered. Tacky moved through the smoke like a ghost of kingly bearing, blade a rhythm, bead flashing with every arc. He was not the same man who had sat by the fire. He had become a force honed by grief, blood-slicked cane stalks. The lullaby turned into a war chant, every line a promise. As militias tightened the cordon, Tacky saw one face above the press, a planter who once bought a child's silence with a biscuit. He charged and met the man with a single clean stroke. The planter's eyes emptied. The militia's line closed. Horses plunged through cane, spewing dust. Men were seized and dragged toward the road. Amma fought until hands forced her down. Kwaku was wrestled into ropes. Tacky fought free, but a net of grappling lines caught his leg. He kicked, cursed, and with one last sweep, he cut himself loose, only to find the militia pressing, pistols aimed. He didn't beg. He didn't run. The sun climbed, indifferent, as smoke and flame consumed what could be consumed. The field filled with the sound of the living and the dead. Voices rose, some to sing, some to wail, while the rest of Jamaica watched as if the island itself drew breath. A hand seized Tacky's shoulder from behind. Steel at his back. A whispered order. The battle ended not with a triumphant shout, but with the thud of boots and the clink of chains returning. The flames still clung to the horizon. Blackened stalks bent like broken ribs, and the smell of scorched sugar drifted across the hills. Smoke turned the morning sun into a red coin. From the far side of the field, villagers watched in silence, some with awe, some with terror, none without memory. Tacky knelt in chains, wrists bound tight. Beside him, Amma's kerchief was torn from her head, but her eyes burned fiercer than the fire behind her. Kwaku's chest heaved, rope digging into the scar that had once been proof of survival. Mary Ann stood with the child she had pulled from the flames, her dress streaked with ash, her voice trembling with prayers. The overseers moved among them, checking wounds, counting bodies, dragging rebels into rows like livestock. Blake's corpse had already been lifted, flask still shattered at his side. Gray clutched the remnants of his ledger, cursing the pages singed by smoke. "They'll hang for this," Gray spat, his words thick with bile. "Every last one." Amma looked up at him. "We were already hanging," she said. The words silenced even the soldiers for a moment. The trial was swift, too swift for justice. In Spanish Town, the colonial court convened in the Great Hall, its windows shuttered against the humid heat. On one side, the planters sat polished, their wigs powdered white, their hands trembling only when they reached for wine. On the other, shackled rebels sat in ragged clothes, the weight of iron heavier than the judgment already decided. The governor, Sir Charles Knowles, presided. His voice was cold marble. "You are charged with treason, arson, and the murder of His Majesty's loyal subjects." Tacky lifted his chin. "We are charged with living," he said. Murmurs spread through the hall. A soldier struck him across the mouth, but the echo of his words remained. Kojo's absence hung in the air like smoke. The boy's body had been buried in the field, unmarked, while his lullaby haunted the ears of every rebel who lived. Mortimer sat among the accused, his head bowed, shame carving deeper lines into his face than the irons ever could. "Speak," the governor demanded. Mortimer stammered, "I only..." But his voice cracked. He did not finish. The others looked at him with a silence that accused louder than any word. Amma's testimony was not allowed, but she spoke anyway, her voice rising over the clamor. "You took our children, our names, our land. You thought chains were silence. But even silence has a song," a gavel slammed. "Enough!" Or the sentences came like thunder. Hanging for Tacky, hanging for Kwaku, hanging for Amma, transportation for the women who carried infants, branding and lashes for the youngest. Mortimer was spared execution, but not scorn. He would live branded a betrayer, a living ghost in his own village. The day of execution dawned clear. Crowds gathered, planters in their finest clothes. Villagers pressed at the edges, soldiers forming a square around the scaffold. A hush fell when the condemned were led forward. Tacky walked first, his shoulders squared as if a crown still rested there. He looked not at the governor nor the planters, but at the crowd, the laborers, the children, the old women whose eyes shone with unshed tears. He whispered, "Remember." Kwaku followed, his scar bared to the sun. "This mark was theirs," he said, lifting his chest. "This death is mine." Amma walked last, her kerchief tied again, though faded with blood. She sang, not a lament, but the lullaby Kojo had whistled. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. The melody carried through the air, over heads, into ears, into bones. The trap door fell. The ropes tightened. The lullaby did not break. That night, villagers whispered around fires. Some wept, some cursed, some swore to carry the fight further. Children asked about the singing woman, and elders told them, Amma, who burned the storehouse with fire in her eyes. They asked about the tall man with the bead on his wrist, and the answer was, Tacky, who stood like a king even in chains. The planters, meanwhile, drank heavily in their parlors. Gray rewrote his ledger, columns of loss measured in pounds and shillings. "We must import more," he muttered. "More to replace what's gone." But his hand shook and drops of ink spattered the parchment like blood. Blake's widow received his broken flask, still smelling of whiskey. She placed it on the mantel, her face as stiff as porcelain. "He died for his duty," she told guests. But the servants in the kitchen whispered otherwise. Mortimer wandered the alleys of the town, branded on the cheek, spat upon by both planter and slave. "I did it for my family," he muttered to shadows. But no one listened. Mary Ann held the rescued child and sang him to sleep with the same lullaby Amma had sung on the scaffold. Her voice broke often, but she sang until he slept. Across the island, the story spread. In rum shops, sailors told it as a warning. In market squares, women told it as a tale of courage. On plantations, whispered in the dark, it became a vow. "Their fire still burns," an old man said, tapping his chest. "It burns here." The authorities issued proclamations. "Let it be known," the governor declared, "that rebellion brings only death." Yet even as he spoke, he knew the flames in the cane field were not fully extinguished, because in the silence of the night, when the cane rustled and the wind shifted, some swore they could still hear it, a lullaby carried faint and low, as if sung by voices that refused to rest. And in that sound lay both terror and hope. The years did not bury the memory. They sharpened it. In the cane fields of St. Mary, where stalks grew tall again, whispers clung to the soil. Every cut of the machete seemed to echo the stroke that once felled overseers. Children working alongside their mothers hummed fragments of the lullaby, not knowing where it came from, only that it carried both sorrow and strength. Merchants in Kingston spoke of Tacky in hushed tones. A rebel, a traitor, a king in his own mind. But among the enslaved, the name shifted shape. Tacky, the man who stood taller than chains. Some swore he had not died at all, that the rope had snapped, that he had walked into the mountains and still lived there, crowned in red earth. Amma's fire lived on in story. Women told it while grinding cassava, hands stained white with flour. She lit the storehouse with a torch, and the fire carried our anger skyward. Men repeated it while sharpening tools, machetes glinting like memory. She sang while the rope took her, so the world would not forget. The kerchief became a symbol, red cloth tied in hair on wrists at altars. A quiet rebellion stitched into daily life. Kwaku's scar became legend. Some said he bore it from birth, marked as the one destined to rise. Others claimed it appeared only after the rebellion, carved into the earth itself as a reminder. In backwoods villages, healers traced it onto the skin of newborn boys with ash, whispering, "Be strong like him." Kojo the boy lived only in fragments. His name was spoken like a sigh, a promise unfinished. Mothers told their children, "Do not forget the boy who whistled courage." His lullaby slipped into cradle songs, its origins blurred but its spirit intact. Even Mary Ann, pale-skinned, foreign-tongued, entered the myth. Some said she was a ghost who appeared at night to warn children of overseers. Others said she had been a spy, her blood tied to the enslaved by some hidden lineage. The truth mattered less than the way her story bound stranger and slave in a single thread of defiance. The planters tried to erase it. They burned letters, hid ledgers, forbade gatherings where tales might spread. But stories do not burn easily. They pass like smoke through cracks, carried by tongues and memory. In England, pamphlets circulated about the Jamaican revolt of Easter. The language was cold, calculated in loss of life and property, dangerous insurrection. Yet even there, whispers grew. Abolitionists seized upon the tale. If men rise against chains, should we not ask why the chains exist? Sailors carried the story across the Atlantic, telling it in port taverns from Halifax to Havana. Each retelling bent the truth, but each carried the seed. A king who led his people, a woman who burned a storehouse, a boy who sang to the end. In maroon camps deep in the mountains, the story became oath. Warriors repeated Tacky's name before setting out on raids, invoking his fire as shield. Leaders warned, "Betrayal walks among us still, remember Mortimer." His name, cursed, became a lesson. Decades later, long after the executions, an old woman sat by her hearth, a child at her knee. Her hands were wrinkled, but she tied a strip of red cloth around her wrist as she spoke. They thought the rope ended him, but kings do not end in rope. The child's eyes widened. "Did you see him?" "I saw the smoke. I heard the song. That is enough." Outside, cane rustled in the wind, each stalk whispering. The island itself seemed to remember. And so the story grew, part history, part legend, part warning, part hope. To planters, it was the nightmare of rebellion. To the enslaved, it was proof that chains could break. To their children, it became a song at dusk, a hush before firelight. It spread like roots beneath soil, unseen but unyielding. Even when new generations forgot the dates, the details, the names, they remembered the feeling. Smoke rising, chains breaking, a lullaby cutting through silence, and always the question remained. Was Tacky merely a man, or had he become something greater? Some swore they saw him on stormy nights walking the hills with bead at his wrist, machete in hand, fire at his back. A king without throne, without crown, but with a story that would not die. History writes in ledgers, but memory writes in blood. What happened in the cane fields of St. Mary was not simply rebellion. It was the collision of silence and voice, of despair and defiance. Chains clattered, yes, but so did lullabies. Fire burned, but so did hope. Tacky was called a traitor to empire, yet to those bound in iron, he was proof that a man could stand taller than the gallows. Amma was called arsonist, yet to women who bore burdens and babies alike, she was flame itself, unquenchable, unashamed. Kwaku carried his scar to the rope, and it became scripture carved into flesh. Even Kojo, the boy, left behind no body of legend, only a song, and sometimes a song survives longer than any crown. What is justice in such a tale? The courts declared it swiftly, rope for rebels, order for empire. Yet justice whispered otherwise in the rustle of cane, in the hush of night, in the lullabies mothers still sing. The story is not about victory. Victory was denied. It is about memory, the kind that endures after bodies are broken, after ledgers are rewritten. Memory is rebellion that cannot be chained. Each retelling is a choice, to repeat the lie of insurrection crushed, or to carry the truth of courage unyielding. Legends grow because they answer a hunger history refuses to feed. They remind us that even in defeat there is dignity. Even in betrayal there is warning. Even in ashes there is spark. And so, long after the smoke cleared, the question remained. Who truly stood guilty? The ones who took up the machete, or the ones who forced their hands upon it? The story of Tacky's rebellion is not just a tale of blood and fire, it is a mirror. It shows us what happens when chains are tightened too far, when silence is demanded too long, when dignity is stripped until only defiance remains. History tells us they failed, but legend tells us they still walk. Every lullaby sung, every machete lifted, every whisper in the cane is their voice, and their question is still alive. If you were in their place, if the lash was on your back, if your child was taken, if the ledger called you property, what would you do? Would you endure, forgive, obey, or would you burn it all down? The past is not gone. It breathes in us. And as long as memory remains, the fire never fully dies. So I leave you with this. Do not let their names be forgotten. Speak them, carry them. Judge them not by the rope that took them, but by the courage that made them rise. And now, this has been the slave resistance. If this story gripped you, subscribe for more dark histories untold. Share this with those who seek truth and leave your voice in the comments below. The fire spreads when memory is kept.